what was probably the game of Sunday in week 11 when Green Bay Packers fell to the Minnesota Vikings 34-31. Greg Joseph on the better end of a potential game-winning kick than he's been this season. 3-3. I think I saw that the Vikings were in situations like this season where it's just kind of been the final snap decides the game. Is that correct? Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings.
Ooh, I'd have to look at if you wanted to say final snap. But I do know they've now played 10 games. They're 5-5.
Yeah.
There's been one of those games decided by more than a score. Week 3 win against the Seahawks. Everything else has been a one-score game. Some of them have been more quote-unquote last play than others. They had a loss by a touchdown to the Browns where their last possession was kind of a desperation possession. They've had situations like that. And then they had like a game last week against the Chargers where they knelt it out. It wasn't really the last play, but it was still a one-score win. It was still a close game. But they do kind of live here. Adam Thielen after the game kind of said, yeah, that final drive, we've been here before. We were all really calm. We know this. It's really comfortable. There weren't nerves because we do this every week. And Mike Zimmer said, they've got a lot of experience on the last play of the game. So yeah. They just kind of live here.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, at 5-5, and yeah, I did see that's the stat. At 6 of their 10 games, have been decided in the final snap, and they're 3-3 in those games. And this was a notch on the positive part of the belt. To outlast Aaron Rodgers and this Packers team, is that experience that's going to be, good for this team going forward? They can't get out of their own way elsewhere to where it might not matter.
Well, you kind of hope that some of these games where they scream out to a 2-score lead in the first half don't get to this point, right?
Yeah.
And they've got a lot of experience in this last part. And sure, when you're like, hey, we did this 10 times, at the beginning of the year, and you're sitting there in a wild card game and it's down the last thing, that could come in handy, if they make, or a week 18 game where you need it to get into the playoffs, that kind of thing, life on the line, they're going to be a little more comfortable. But there's also, they're really good at blowing a lead in the end of the first half, and they're really good at melting down in the fourth quarter when all they need to do is get a stop to win the game. They're really good at going 3 and out when a good score or a big long drive would pretty much seal it. So there are a lot more problems than that with the Vikings that I don't know if they can fix. They are a pretty young team, and they're getting pretty good at this particular thing that usually comes with experience, but they're pretty young. They're pretty, I don't know.
At this point, he had 8 catches, 169,
He's a beast.
2 touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, probably
he's a beast. That's it.
Unreal performance by him in back-to-back weeks. Is him taking kind of that step forward as an elite receiver in this league? Has that been the difference?
He's always been this good.
Yeah.
He's always been streaking open downfield constantly in the game. The difference is, I think, a bit of a philosophy change. So there are a couple adjustments that they made leading into last week's game against the Chargers that have made this huge difference after a couple of very anemic offensive performances in the couple weeks prior. They just kind of made a point to say, Justin, we are going to go to you more. And telling Kirk, throw a dangerous pass. It's okay. And Mike Zimmer even said, some of them get tipped and go up and become an interception. Then that's so be it. Throw the risky pass and trust your wide receiver to come make a play. And what Justin Jefferson says about all that is, I can see the ball. DB can't see the ball because he only knows to turn around when I turn around. So I know when it's coming. I have an advantage. Let me use that advantage to make a big contested catch. You saw that on the final touchdown the Vikings scored with Justin Jefferson just making an adjustment to the ball. Defensive back couldn't see it at all. And, he can then catch it and then even had enough space to score from there. So, yeah, they've made a big adjustment. They made a couple of schematic adjustments to open those things up a little bit more. Routes kind of stressing each other a little bit more and routes working together a little more instead of just ISO, a bunch of curls across the board and everybody having to win man-to-man. No, you're kind of giving Justin Jefferson a little more help, and they're constantly tweaking their offense to try to get to those deep concepts a little easier with the O-line that's struggling and all that stuff. So they've made a lot of changes, but I think a big one is just Mike Zimmer going to Kirk Cousins and saying, dude, rip it. You can do this. If it goes bad, but rip it. Let's go.
It's the ultimate trust fall. Wide receivers that you can truly trust in those situations. DeAndre Hopkins, probably one of the guys in the games today. Devontae Adams, and then Justin Jefferson has emerged. Luke Braun talking about this win all day today on Monday's edition of Locked On Vikings. I do have to get this in there. This might be
no.
the greatest game coming up between a pair of 5-5 teams in NFL history. The Niners Vikings is a sneaky good game about a pair of contrasting styles. I can't wait for it.
Huge game.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that because the Shanahan-Kubiak thing they've been identical offenses for a while, but they have sort of diverged a little bit where Shanahan's doing a lot more pre-snap motion stuff, trying to still kind of stretch things horizontally, and this Clint Kubiak version of the offense has turned more like a spread offense than, they are not like a zone boot team anymore like they were for so many years under Clint's dad, Gary. So yeah, it's going to be a very, very interesting one. And we got a little bit of a revenge thing going on because a couple years we went into San Francisco in the playoffs and things didn't go well.
For sure. It's going to be a great game, and Luke's going to be breaking it down leading up to that contest next Sunday in Week 12. Can't wait for it. Listen to Locked On Vikings. And, of course, listen to Luke tomorrow with Ross Jackson here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Thanks, man.
Of course.